Welcome back to AM Agenda. It appears as though the history wars have begun again, this time over what students will be taught in Australian schools. The Shadow Education Minister, Chris Pyne, says the government wants to give Australian students a black armband view of Australia's history. He says there are 118 references to Aboriginal and Indigenous issues in the new national curriculum, but there are no mentions of Westminster or the Magna Carta. Joining me this morning on our panel of politicians, Craig Emerson and Mitch Fifield. Craig Emerson, firstly to you, is there too much emphasis on Indigenous issues in the new curriculum?
Well, of course not. There's a balanced reference to Indigenous issues, and isn't it amazing that Tony Abbott is out visiting remote Aboriginal communities, and that's a good thing. And so he's empathising and supporting Aboriginal communities. That's the impression that he wants to give. And then he's got his education spokesman back in the city saying, before the whole policy, the curriculum was unveiled, based on newspaper reports, this is all about Aboriginal history and how badly we treated Aboriginal people. It's so typical, it's pathetic that Tony Abbott would have his education spokesman trying to undermine a massive achievement, the first national curriculum in 108 years, and before it's out, they're attacking it, they're undermining it, because they just can't get used to the idea of supporting a good initiative. I actually think it would reflect better on the coalition if just every now and again they supported something that the government did, and there's widespread support for this national curriculum that will allow kids to move from one state to another, a contribution, by the way, to our efforts for a seamless national economy. We are a single nation, Ashley, and people have been calling for this national curriculum for so long, and before it's even delivered, the coalition is bagging out on it and saying that they'll review it, and if they're not happy with it, they'll tear it up.
Well, of course,
how irresponsible is that?
The coalition isn't against a national curriculum, it's against what is
They're
the
against
content
this one,
of
yes,
the national
and they
curriculum.
said they will tear this one up.
Mitch
Now
Fifield,
that is so irresponsible.
Mitch Fifield, let's get your take on this. It's important, isn't it, to give students a good understanding of Asian and Indigenous cultures. History teachers, the consensus this morning seems to be that Chris Pyne overreacted and gave a real knee-jerk reaction to yesterday's announcements.
Look, sure, those are important things to include in a national curriculum, and the opposition supports a national curriculum. I myself went to 5 different schools in 3 different states growing up, so I appreciate the difficulties kids have when they move interstate and they have different curriculums. But in supporting the concept of a national curriculum, it doesn't mean that we support just any old national curriculum. It's important that a national curriculum isn't a lowest common denominator curriculum, that it raises standards overall, but it's also important that it's a balanced curriculum. And it has been mentioned many times over the last couple of days, 118 references to Aboriginal and Indigenous and Torres Strait Islander culture. That's a good thing. It's important to cover that important part of Australian life and history, but it's important to have that balanced. There are only something of the order of 60 references to Asia, only 10 references to Great Britain. So it's important that we also have adequate balance for the region in which we live and also the nation which gave birth to Australia. But I think perhaps there's another element which should be considered in the wake of the mea culpas from the government. I think perhaps there should be a very substantial section in the new national curriculum on Maoist self-criticism.
Mitch Fifield.
Oh, that's so hilarious.
It's a good line, though.
I think it's quite good, actually.
You've been working on that one.
He did well with that
self-criticism
one.
from you.
That one had a few practices.
Yeah.
Listen, we are running out of time, so I want to get to another issue. Peter Garrett emerged publicly last night. He's still, of course, defending the actions he took over the insulation program's rollout. Mr Garrett had this to say last night on the ABC.
At all times, for me, the most important thing was to make sure that not only the advice I received I acted on, but we made sure that the program could be rolled out safely, and that's why I moved for its suspension.
Mitch Fifield, you've got to give Mr Garrett points, don't you, for fronting up last night and facing voters on a show like that where he's open to all sorts of questions.
He's sure got more front than Myers, but I think last night we saw exactly why Peter Garrett should be sacked. He just doesn't get it. he admitted that at no stage did he consider offering his resignation. Well, that's stunning, that he lacks that he has that lack of insight and self-awareness, but also the fact that he said that he acted on the advice that he received on all occasions. Well, we don't put ministers in the cabinet to simply act on bureaucratic advice. Their job is to question that advice. Their job is to probe. Their job is to say, I'm sorry, that's not good enough, go away, come back. We don't want ministers who just sit there as some sort of glorified postbox. Ministers are there on behalf of the Australian public to make sure that taxpayers are getting value for money in programs and that the taxpayer is safe. Peter Garrett failed on both those counts, and his great defence is, oh well, I accepted advice. That's not what you're there for. You're there to ask questions, you're there to do your job.
Craig Emerson, of course, we all have seen what a debacle this has been, and the opposition over the last few days have been saying, well, if the government can't even handle an insulation program, how on earth are we meant to trust it to run hospitals, for example? How much of a blow was it to see someone like Peter Garrett, who's such a star member of Cabinet, to be demoted by the Prime Minister, and then for Mr Garrett to say, wasn't my idea, I didn't even offer it up?
Peter Garrett is a great human being, and I think most Australians would agree with that observation.
That.
Yeah, well, I'm not
just
sure about
as a
that
minister,
if you just heard from Mitch, but he is a great human being. He said that he responded to advice, and you don't know, Mitch, that he didn't instigate extra work or the generation of extra advice. The test that the coalition is applying to Rudd government ministers is that they must act on advice that they didn't receive. They must act on briefings that they didn't receive. This is so plainly absurd. And if you contrast
Craig,
it to George Brandis's defence, if you contrast it to George Brandis's defence of John Howard and Peter Reith on the Children Overboard affair, where every Australian knows that they were in that up
that's
to
right,
their
Craig.
necks.
All roads lead back to work choices. All roads lead back to Children Overboard.
The standard,
you've got to do
Mitch,
better.
that you've been applying, the standard that you've been applying to Peter Garrett is a vastly different standard to the one that you applied to your own Prime Minister and your own Defence Minister. Hypocrisy, thy name is Liberal. Now, Peter Garrett will be working in the natural environment. I've known Peter for 25 years. He has a great passion for it. We worked on banning mining in Antarctica, Kakadu Stage 2 World Heritage listing, the World Heritage listing of the wet tropics of North Queensland. He has a wonderful record in that area, and he will do great things in supporting and protecting the natural environment of this country.
Okay, Mitch Fifield and Craig Emerson, thank you as always for joining us. We have run out of time for today's program. Thank you.
Rightio, thanks Ashley.
Don't forget to join Kieran Gilbert and David Spears this afternoon for PM Agenda. David Spears is on location in Hobart. He'll be having an interview this afternoon with the Tasmanian Liberal leader Will Hodgman, and Kieran Gilbert will have all the latest from Canberra this afternoon. Also today, of course, the interest rate decision will be out at 2:30 p.m, and here on Sky News we'll have full coverage of that, with economists expecting that rates will rise today to 4%. That's all we have time for this program. I'll be back with you tomorrow morning. For now, I'm Ashley Gillen. Thanks for your company.